There was a Friday night ritual that millions of Americans shared for decades, and most people who lived it couldn't have described it to you at the time, because it just was, the way certain things just are when you're young and something feels permanent. You went, you laced up, you stepped onto the floor, and for a few hours the whole week fell away. It was simple, it was affordable, it was social in a way that didn't require a phone or a plan or much of anything at all. And then, almost without anyone noticing, it stopped. Not all at once. Not because of one decision or one bad year. It just slowly became harder to find. And then harder still, until one day you searched for one near you and came up empty. This is the story of the roller skating rink, what it really was, how it worked, and how it disappeared from nearly every town in the country. That is the part I want to sit with for a second, because it wasn't always like this. The gap between then and now is bigger and stranger than most people realize. I want to show you what those places actually were, not just the skating, but the whole world inside them, and then walk through exactly how that world came apart, because the answer is more interesting than you would think. Estimates suggest there were over 4,000 roller skating rinks operating across the United States at the peak of the industry, somewhere in the late 1970s and into the 80s, and faded aerial photographs from that era show suburban strips anchored by those big hand-painted signs, parking lots packed on Friday nights, a world that looked permanent. Today, fewer than 1,000 remain, and a good number of those are struggling. The question of where they all went is really a question about how a specific set of social and economic conditions quietly assembled themselves, held together for a few decades, and then just as quietly fell apart. But to understand why it disappeared, you first have to understand what it actually was, because it wasn't just a place to skate. Picture a mid-sized American town, late 1970s, and grainy Super 8 home footage from the time captures exactly what it looked like. A suburban strip with a big hand-painted sign, or a converted warehouse set back from the road, a parking lot that fills up every Friday night, and before you even push through the double doors, you can smell it. Leather and rubber and floor wax, a combination that is genuinely unlike anything else. And then you hear it, this low, continuous rumble coming up through the floor. Not music exactly, though there is music, but underneath the music the sound of maybe 50 or 80 pairs of wheels on hardwood, and it's physical. You feel it in your chest a little. And then you're inside, and the first thing you see is the rental counter, a wall of cubby holes stacked floor to ceiling, each one with a pair of skates stuffed in it, numbered tags hanging from the laces. And the person behind the counter is maybe 16 or 45, and they do not need to ask your size more than once, because they've already sized you up, and they're pulling the boots before you finish saying 8.5, tan leather with orange wheels and a thick rubber toe, stop on the front. Vintage photographs from community scrapbooks and local newspaper archives of the era show those benches lined with teenagers pulling on rental skates, the linoleum floors worn smooth at the edges, the whole scene lit in that warm tungsten glow of the decade. They write your shoe size on a slip and hand you a key to a little locker, and you sit on a bench and you lace up and you stand up, unsteady, holding the back of the bench. And then you cross the carpet to the edge of the hardwood, and you stop there for a second, because there's something about that boundary, that carpet to hardwood line, that feels significant. Like once you step over it, you're committed. Then you push off and you're in it, You're part of the oval, circling with everyone else. Donna Summer or Michael Jackson or Cyndi Lauper bouncing off the low ceiling and the mirrored ball throwing little squares of light across the floor. If you fall, and it's embarrassing. But everyone laughs, including you. Somewhere near the back wall, there's a snack bar with nachos under a heat lamp, and paper cups of fountain soda, and a small arcade cabinet that is always occupied, and next to the skate counter there's a lost-and-found bin full of mismatched socks. And this is the detail that gets me every time, because of course it's full of mismatched socks. You put your shoes in a locker and wore the Rinks rental skates, and then somehow went home with one sock. And it happened to everyone. And the bin just filled up over the years, and nobody claimed them, and that bin of socks tells you something true about the texture of this world. And then there's the DJ. Archival photographs from rinks across the country show the DJ booth elevated above the oval floor, not just someone pressing play, but in many rinks, a genuine local figure. Someone who knew the room, who knew when to call all skate, and when to shift the lights and lower his voice into the mic and say, couples skate only. And you either grabbed someone's hand, or you glided over to the side rail and watched. If you were 12 years old and someone held your hand on that rink floor, that was a thing that happened, a real thing, and you thought about it for days. Some rinks in the early part of that era still had live organists on a raised platform, playing through the sessions the way a baseball stadium organist would. And even after that, mostly gave way to DJ booths. The structure remained. The DJ controlled the social rhythm of the entire room, and that was a real kind of power. And the people who ran these places knew something that took the rest of the industry years to figure out. What they knew was that they weren't just selling skating, they were selling the whole environment, the whole Friday night. And the price of admission was designed to make that environment as full as possible, because a full room is its own product, and a thin room is a problem. So the ticket price was kept accessible, typically a few dollars for admission plus skate rental in many towns during the 70s and the 80s, though it varied by region and year. The idea was volume. You want the oval packed, you want the rumble going, you want the nachos selling, you want the arcade tokens turning over. And it works. It all works together when the room is full. The ownership model made this possible in a particular way, because most rinks were independently owned, often family operations, passed down sometimes. Old local newspaper features from small towns across the Midwest and the South ran black and white photographs of these families, the owner mopping the hardwood floor in the morning light, adjusting skates in the afternoon, running the register in the evening. This was the kind of operation that survives on thin margins as long as volume holds up and costs stay manageable. There was often someone on staff whose job was specifically skate maintenance, re-wheeling, replacing toe stops, relacing, checking the bearings, a small technical knowledge that was specific to this one piece of equipment and that existed because the rental fleet was the actual product, and keeping it good was not optional. And then there were the lessons, Saturday mornings often, beginner sessions, a way of building the next generation of regulars. And the birthday parties, which were enormous. Faded snapshots from family photo albums across America show the same scene repeated in 100 towns. A paper tablecloth near the snack bar, balloons taped to folding chairs, a cake carried carefully from the parking lot, the birthday kid wearing a paper crown. Those bookings were serious revenue. They were predictable. They came in every weekend. You could plan around them. They helped pay the heating bill in February when the walk-in traffic was softer. That Friday night formula worked almost everywhere, until it didn't. And then, quietly, a few things happened that flipped everything. The important part is that they didn't arrive all at once. They arrived one by one over roughly a decade, which meant each one was manageable in the moment. Each one could be absorbed or explained away, and it was only in the rear view that you could see them stacking up. The first thing that started to shift was home entertainment. And here's where things get interesting, because the threat did not come from another rink. It came from the living room. Yellowed newspaper advertisements from 1983 and 1984 show VCR units dropping in price week by week in the Sunday circulars, and that changed something real. For the first time, a Friday night at home had actual entertainment competition. You could rent a movie. You could sit on your own couch. You did not need to go anywhere. That sounds like a small thing, but it was not, because the rink's entire value proposition rested on the assumption that going out was the default and staying home was the boring option. Once staying home became legitimately interesting, the calculus started to shift. Then MTV launched in 1981 and cable television expanded. Suddenly, the home felt more alive, more current, more connected to the culture. Then video game consoles arrived, Atari first and then Nintendo, and the arcade cabinet in the rink lobby had always been a draw, a small revenue stream, and a genuine reason to stay a little longer after your session ended. But once you could play something similar at home, that specific pull softened. The rink noticed it not dramatically, not in a single bad weekend, but in a gradual, quiet way that was hard to point to and hard to fix. It wasn't one thing that changed, it was three things arriving in the same decade, and the rink could absorb one. It could probably absorb two. What it couldn't survive was all of them at once, because at the exact same moment home entertainment was drawing people in off the street, the cost side of running a rink was moving in the wrong direction. Rinks occupied large footprints. The oval floor alone required serious square footage, plus the lobby, the skate counter, the snack bar, the bathrooms, the parking lot, and as suburban commercial real estate values climbed through the 1980s and into the 1990s, the land under many of these buildings became genuinely valuable. In some cases, that land was more valuable than the revenue the building could generate, and an owner looking at those numbers had to think about what they were really sitting on. And then there was insurance. Running a public venue where people strap wheels to their feet and move at speed on a hard floor is not a low liability proposition, and as liability awareness grew through the 1980s and legal costs became a more pressing concern, insurance premiums for this kind of facility went up. For a small family operation running on thin margins, that increase was not just an inconvenience, it was existential, because one serious injury claim at the wrong moment could threaten the whole thing. The labor math was also real. A rink running evening and weekend sessions needed floor guards, skate rental staff, a DJ, snack bar workers, cleaning crew, and someone managing the desk. And all of those wages add up. They add up faster when the room is a little thinner than it used to be. And then the birthday party revenue, which had been so reliable, started moving. Chuck E. Cheese opened in 1977 and by the early 1980s was expanding. Vintage promotional photographs from that era show the brightly lit dining rooms, animatronic characters on a small stage, tokens in plastic cups on laminate tables, and it offered something the rink could not easily match. It provided a fully contained, themed experience designed specifically for children's parties, and families started booking it. The Saturday afternoon party bookings that had been a predictable pillar of rink revenue softened, and you felt that too. And then rollerblading happened. Inline skates, popularized in the late 1980s and into the 1990s, moved skating outside, into parks, onto sidewalks, through neighborhoods, and that was actually great for skating as a physical activity. More people were doing it in more places, but it was quietly terrible for the rink, because the rink's entire premise was that skating required a specific venue, a specific floor, rented equipment, a controlled environment, and inline skates dissolved that premise. They said you can do this wherever you want, you don't need to go anywhere, and that logic cut deep. The first sign of all this wasn't dramatic. It was just a little quieter than the week before. Late 1970s, grainy local television news segments show reporters visiting thriving neighborhood rinks, the formula working, the rooms full. Early 1980s, the first pressures arrive, but the business is still viable. You adjust, you try some new promotions, you book more parties, you extend the arcade section. Mid-1980s, the arcade revenue is softening as home consoles improve, but the sessions are still going, the regulars are still there. Late 1980s, insurance costs are climbing. A few older rinks in smaller markets close, not dramatically, just quietly. The sign comes down and something else goes in. Early 1990s, rollerblading is everywhere outside. The walk-in traffic for traditional quad skating sessions has softened noticeably, and the rooms on Friday nights are not what they were. Mid-1990s, a wave of closures, not all at once, but steady, and by the end of that decade, the era when a rink existed in a huge swath of American towns is effectively over. Here's where it gets more interesting, though, because what closed wasn't just a business, and that's what I want to get at before we're done. The building is still there in a lot of towns. Old street-level photographs from the late 1990s and early 2000s show these hulking structures mid-transition. The rink signage partially removed, the parking lots empty, a new banner going up where the hand-painted skating logo used to be. It's a furniture store now, or a church, or a self-storage facility, or it got torn down for a strip mall, and the building being there matters because it means the space exists. The footprint is right. It was physically possible, and yet the thing itself is gone. And what went with it was more than a venue. The roller rink was, for many teenagers in the 70s and the 80s, one of the very few places to practice being social. It was a place to navigate the awkwardness of early adolescence, to figure out how to talk to someone you liked, to fail at something physical and get up and try again, without full adult supervision but with adults nearby. That combination, that specific calibration of freedom and safety, is genuinely hard to find now. Nobody designed it that way. It just emerged from the structure of the place, from the sessions and the rules and the staff, and from the fact that it cost a few dollars and you could stay for hours. The rink was also what some people call a third place, not home, not school, not work, just a place you could go, a place that was yours and also everyone's. That kind of space has become rarer in American life in a way that has nothing to do with skating and everything to do with how we have arranged our towns and our time. The DJ, too, in many communities, the rink DJ was a real local figure, someone who shaped what music teenagers heard before radio fragmented and long before streaming. That taste-making function, that local cultural role, dissolved with everything else, and nobody formally took it over. It just stopped existing at that scale. Maintenance knowledge for skates is the detail that sticks with me. The person on staff who could replace the wheels on a boot, tighten a bearing, and replace a toe stop. The small technical literacy around this one specific object is not complicated knowledge. It is not rare or difficult, but it existed because the rental fleet needed it. When the rental fleet went away, so did the reason to have it. Now it is niche information, the kind of thing you find in an online forum, kept alive by the competitive skating community. That is fine, that is how these things go, but it is a small example of a larger pattern. When a service disappears, the practical knowledge that supported it tends to go with it, quietly, without announcement. Nobody made a decision to end it. That's the part that's hardest to explain. There was no meeting where someone decided the American roller rink was finished, no policy change, no single corporate move. Instead, a set of conditions assembled themselves in the post-war decades: affordable land, affordable leisure time, limited home entertainment, and a specific family and social structure. One by one, those conditions changed, and the thing they had supported became harder to sustain. It became harder still. For most operators, it simply stopped making financial sense to keep the lights on, keep the floor waxed, and keep the rental skates in good order. So they didn't. The era ended, not with a bang, but with a lot of quiet, individual decisions made by owners over winters, when bookings were thin, when the insurance renewal came in, and when the math just did not work anymore. Some of them are still open, a few hundred scattered around. If you have one near you, go, seriously, go on a Friday night and listen to the floor. It's worth it. But the era when one existed in a huge swath of American towns, when you could get there in a few miles on a Friday night and pay a few dollars and skate for hours, and hear the DJ call couples skate and eat nachos under a heat lamp and borrow a locker key and lose a sock and do it all again the next weekend, that era is gone. It is gone. Not because anyone wanted it gone, but because the world it depended on quietly shifted underneath it. The world that replaced it is fine, but it does not have that particular combination of things. Low cost, public, physical, social, local, structured, but free. You do not always notice what a combination like that was worth until the building is a furniture store and you are searching on your phone and coming up empty. If you were a teenager in the late 1970s or 1980s, you probably already know exactly what I am talking about. If you were not, I hope this gave you a sense of the room, the rumble of the floor, the mirrored ball turning, the DJ's voice dropping into the mic, the carpet to hardwood line you stepped across, and then you were in it. You were part of it. The whole oval moved together like it had its own logic, its own gravity. Did your town have a roller rink? Do you remember the name of it or what the building is now?